are back. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Am I Doing This Wrong? The real question that we are on the hunt for all the wrong answers. I am one of your co-hosts, Ryann. Super excited to be back for another week. It gets better and better each week, I have to say. And not just because I stutter less, but also that. And I am here with my awesome co-host and best friend, Morgan.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We're excited for another episode. Also not stuttering as much, hopefully. We'll see. The topics, oh, there it was.
This is bound to happen.
Yeah.
I set it up.
I know, right? It just, you planted it there and there we go. So.
And you worked. Yeah, it worked.
It worked.
Reverse psychology is the topic. No, just kidding. But well, yeah, welcome to another episode tonight. Before we dive into our topic, which is covering just a little bit and just certain parts of activism, we know that not only has activism been popular just as far as, this past year with, COVID hitting and everyone actually having a little bit more time to maybe pay attention to their surroundings. I definitely know that even as a person who considers themselves pretty active, whether, it was before or after COVID, that definitely gave us a lot more time to think about the things that were going on and really just assess our part in everything, right? And like what we were or weren't contributing. And if we were contributing something, was it worth it? Were we doing it the right way? I know that was a big question on a lot of people's minds last year, trying to figure out, what is my contribution and is there a better way to do it? It's a hefty topic, right? And there can be so many perspectives, just like all the topics we do, really. Yeah. But I do just want to start, as always, with just making sure that people know we are not trying to be experts on anything. We are not trying to give you the best advice out there. We are just trying to give a perspective that we feel can honestly be a lot more relatable than trying to find the right answer to everything, right? And trying to always match the temperature of what's going on in the world. Like, you're not always going to be able to do that. That's not realistic. Health-wise, like physically, so there's just a lot of aspects to it. So first, I do want to check in with you though, Morgan. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. It's a good Monday. I had a good week, had some family stuff come up, but hopefully everything's okay there. We're kind of seeing what's going on. But otherwise, doing well. How about you?
Good. Yeah, it's a good week. We're back in the classroom, and I know I'll probably mention this often because teacher life is literally never stops. But it's good. We're finally getting the hang of it with the masks and with the, just a lot of the different requirements now. But yeah, it's been a good week. I'm actually finally on the brink of having like a therapist, like a set therapist. And that feels really good. It honestly helps my anxiety. Last night I was trying to fall asleep. I got into bed early and I was really excited because I was like, oh, I'm in bed early. And then I realized the excitement was actually anxious and it was anxiety. And so I was laying there and trying to figure out like, why am I so anxious? Which
gives you more downward anxiety. Spiral. Yeah. Let me analyze every single piece of my life right now at 12 a.m. when I'm trying to go to sleep.
Yeah, literally. And I got into bed at 10:30. Yeah. So, yeah. So it feels good. It really did bring me a lot of like calm today. Yeah. So everything's ready and in place. We just have to, kind of do the last few things before we can set up an appointment. Yeah. So that'll be really nice. And I will talk about why that was such a big part of my life last year. And we'll get into that as well. So so like I said, so our topic today is activism. And I think this is one of those things where as I was picking this topic, I was very passionate about it, right? And I was like, yes, like this is a topic that I knew was going to come up, not even just on the podcast, but this is something that I'm more than willing to talk about, just in everyday conversation, because I do think that it's important. The root word of activism is active, right? And to me, when I hear that word, I don't think of one type of person. I just think of people that want to see change and will actually take action toward that. Right.
Yeah.
And so that was it was just simple for me. I was like, oh yeah, activism, as in, the people not only on the streets, but the people supporting those people,
Right.
and sharing resources and really just trying to improve their community and somebody else's situation other than their own.
Yeah.
And as I started to dive into research, I was actually really excited to find so many different perspectives on just what that term could mean, because that really will define the way that you use your action, right? Like that'll define, like, whatever activism is to you will mean that's the way that it plays out in your life, right? And your community. So
right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good, just intro into the topic, because for me personally, I feel like I've been doing activism wrong. Like you said, last year was a really heavy year for everyone. You had a lot more free time to be introspective and really get into, are you contributing? Are you contributing enough? So I definitely had a lot of those questions for myself, thinking I'm doing things right, and then seeing what's going on in the world and seeing how little participation I had in it, and what was enough for me, when, that guilt, where do you stand? And so, I'm excited to hear about some of those different ideas and where people can place themselves in a way where they are contributing in a positive way, but also on their own terms, and knowing,
right,
where they stand.
Right. No, exactly. Contributing on your own terms, which is very similar to, again, the topic that we will get into on another episode, but therapy, self-care, and what that really entails, right? It's not all just about facials, whether that be facials from, a guy, or
what kind of
facials? Yeah, or facials
I think
from
that is a
your
contribution
bathroom
to society. I'm just saying. That's
like the actual facial is a contribution to society.
No, that someone is allowing it. You're a hero. Oh. Where's that statue? Oh, yeah, maybe we don't want a statue of, not the full situation.
Yeah,
just a nice plaque.
Just a nice plaque. And this gal took one for the team. She literally took it on the chin.
Yeah.
Exactly. Perfect way to lead in. So,
right? So what else can people do other than
yeah, what other contributions can they make other than that? Yeah. So I didn't think there were many. I'll say that. I thought that, in my younger 20s, I was making a lot of contributions. That's all I'll say. Okay, so
you're the hero.
Not all heroes wear capes. Humble brag. I love that term. I love oxymorons. It's great. Okay, so anywho. So activism. Yeah. So I guess the first thing that I wrote down, as far as so when I was starting my research, I literally was like, okay, I need to start at the base. What is activism? Just because I think I know a term, doesn't mean that that's how the world defines it. And that doesn't mean that, that's like the actual definition, right?
Right.
Yeah. So how do we define activism, right? Putting aside, or not even putting aside, but thinking about your own personal beliefs versus the actual definition, or just definitions that you can find that are maybe a bit more common for people, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that kind of ties into the social perception of what we think of activism is versus, a definition that maybe people who are active have come together and created, right? Mm-hmm. So the first resource that I found, throughout my research, I literally typed in the question, how do we define activism, right? And another variation that I typed in, what is activism, right? Mm-hmm. And so I found this really cool website, activisthandbook.org. And basically what it is, which I really like when people of that space come together to create a handbook, right? A kind of blueprint, something to, if you're new in the field, or if you want to be in that field, I like that when people kind of come together, collaborate, and put all that stuff together to make sure that other people that are interested have something to kind of look to, Yeah. And I'm all about collaboration because I'm a socialist. So that's also important to me. But anyway, yeah, so it's what they self-describe this website as a collaborative Wikipedia-like style manual created by activists for activists.
Okay. So can they contribute to it like ongoing? Is that what they mean by Wikipedia style?
Yes. So
Okay.
I saw, and the reason, I mean, obviously I should definitely check for sure, but yes, I think so, because when I was looking at the website, they had like the added, on like the most recent date,
Oh,
right?
cool. Okay.
Yeah. So anywho, so yeah, this website defines activism at its most basic. Activism means action taken to create social change, right? And so this for me was like spot on. I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I thought, so very good. I'm going to use this. But then I also wanted to find a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And so their definition, as far as like, they kind of had like I'd say like this was kind of like their mission statement for the handbook.
Mm-hmm.
They said, for us, activism means collective efforts to create change from the grassroots. So that word grassroots, I hear a lot. I've heard it a lot used, especially not even just in the activism space or social activism space, but also in like political activism, political change. I've heard that used, grassroots. And I've never really thought about what that meant either. I think it's kind of typically known as something that just starts with regular everyday people, right?
Yeah.
And that's true, right? Like that, and that is like, I looked up the term, and yeah, a lot of people also define it as, just people driven, community based, not necessarily backed by a ton of money or resources. It's just people that come together that know they want something to happen within their immediate community, or within like their immediate spaces, profession, etc. Right?
Right.
And so this website I really liked because they also used other activists, and these activists, I don't know if they call themselves that, right? Like, I don't know if it's a self-labeled thing, and we'll get into that in a second, but they used other activists that I also really look to, especially when I'm, as far as like books, especially having to do with like other periods in time that, activism was very, very big
Active.
and a very hot topic and active. Yeah, exactly. Right. And so I found a quote that they had on their website by Angela Davis, one of my, I don't have idols. I think idols are weird. That term idols, like people that you look to for some reason, just because they've done things, that doesn't really mean that them as a person would mesh with who you really are, right?
That's
Idols
true.
are
It can get
usually,
tricky, then something
yeah.
comes out. Nobody's a perfect person. And then you feel, yeah. But I think through their actions, as we've been talking about, you could see some kind of inspiration in them.
For sure. Yeah. So that's the
Yeah,
thing. I'm
between the
inspired.
two.
Exactly.
Mhm.
I'm inspired by Angela Davis.
Yeah.
She's my idol, right? I don't look to her to, make any moves in my life. I'm not like, what would Angela Davis
Right.
do?
She's not the end all be all of every decision you make.
Right. Right. Exactly.
But she is someone to look to for.
But she's someone to look to.
Mhm.
Exactly. And someone that I've read her writings, and I thoroughly agree, especially for the time that she wrote, I
Mhm.
think was incredible. One of her books, namely, the title is Women, Race, and Class. This book had a huge impact on my younger years, and still does, but especially when I was like, young 20s, like just, going to my first rallies, first protests.
Mhm.
I started to really try and seek out some like really radical, writings and teachings. And this is a person that has, nearly died for the cause, right? And has seen a lot of people die for the work that she believes in, right?
Right.
She went to jail for a time. She wrote while she was in jail. And so I just think for me, this person, yeah, not an idol, but somebody that thoroughly has inspired, my work and what I consider to be activism.
Mhm.
But anyway, online, she is described as a political activist. And I thought that was so interesting, like a political activist, because as opposed to a social activist, right?
Mhm.
But this is a title that she does not call herself, right? I've never read any book where Angela Davis herself is like, yes, I'm an activist. This is what I do. she has called herself like an educator, right? She has called herself a teacher, things like that.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting because every article that I was finding where they were discussing activists, right? The people who are in that field, you know, with maybe bigger names, or even just at a rally, right? Activists gather together. I thought it was really interesting because it was never the person themselves calling themselves that, right? It was always like a title given to them. And I don't think it's a title that anybody maybe feels, you know, bad to have or, you know, a certain type of way. But that's what I thought until I found somebody else.
Okay.
And so we'll get into her in a second. But the point of that is that, or the point of bringing up the definition is just that political activism, social activism, like there are so many facets of being active for social change or for change in general, right? And so, like I said, being active in your community is really, it depends on your community, right? It's not only focused on, you know, the extremes, right? Like our prison system or, like our police brutality, something like that. Like these really, really large issues that are obviously going to take many systems being broken down to actually, happen, that you can call kind of a success. And so I just thought it was really interesting that the definitions didn't always necessarily match all of the person's work, right? I think that I won't speak for someone like Angela Davis, obviously, but I think that she has definitely affected not only just the political arena, but the social arena as well. I think that she has focused in social and that has spilled over into the political. I don't think that she started in the political. She was a very grassroots. If we're going to call anybody grassroots, she is a very grassroots, for the people, by the people type of activist, in my opinion, and especially going off of her work as well.
Yeah.
She also has a great book titled Are Prisons Obsolete?, which is a really good short. It's a very short book. I really think it's like about the thickness of my pinky. It's really thin, but the point is no, or I'm sorry, the point is yes, they are obsolete. It's a pretty quick, it's a pretty quick read for a reason. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's just one page. Yes.
Yeah. I know. Right. Buy the book. Yeah. Support her. But anyways, so as I was looking, so I'm finding these really cool people and these really cool quotes on this site, this activisthandbook.org site. And another person that came up, and this kind of brings us into the second topic, is this is actually a student protester. And so she's part of the young generation, not the millennials. She's after us, right? Gen Z.
Okay.
Yeah. And her name is Eva Lewis. She's a student protester, but she also co-founded Black Lives in Chicago, Youth for Black Lives in Chicago, excuse me. Mm-hmm. And basically it was a group of young folk that wanted to come together and like see that social change being created in their immediate community, right?
Is she is she in high school still or college?
At the time that so she's actually done a TED Talk, which is what I watched. But at the time, she was a high school student. Yes. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So they started this as actual like teens, right? Like they started this chapter in Chicago. Yes. And so this brings me to the point, because herself, she does not call herself an activist. What she says is to be an activist is to speak, and to be an advocate is to listen. And so she falls on the activist spectrum as far as, like what she's talking about. But she is basically just saying that, like, I am just fighting for my community, right? It's a much less like labeled approach to it all. She's just very much so like, I have never been taught about all of these titles and labels. I don't come from, a very fancy background. Like my parents weren't like these, huge theorists that were just like passing down all of this like knowledge to me. I am just a person that grew up in these circumstances and think that we can do way better because I've seen it happen in other places.
Right.
She was a student that was bused out of her area, like out of her immediate area, to go to like a better school. She tested into like a, quote unquote, like better school. Right.
Yeah.
And so she literally didn't go to the schools that she was surrounded with. But she still saw those problems, right? So living in that situation and then being bussed out of it to see that everyone doesn't live like that, right?
Right.
And so her TED Talk is really awesome. If you have time, definitely look up Eva Lewis. She has a really good TED Talk. It's only about 15 minutes, but it's really deep and really impactful. And so that brings me to, the second topic, which is advocacy versus activism. And so this was really interesting because advocacy, I think I've always thought of, like if a person is an advocate for, climate change, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be like a part of, organizations or maybe it does, right? But for me, my personal experience, I've always thought of advocates as people that are willing to share resources about something. But it does kind of, it's more of like a back, I'll take the back seat to this, right? I'll allow the activists, right? The people that want to be active in the front, and I will support them by either, financially, with resources, if I have access to, maybe venues or event places that I can provide. That's what I more so,
supporting in other ways. Then yeah.
Right, exactly. And so Eva Lewis talks about this, right? And that's what I, found as far as like what I was thinking about. I didn't want to talk about necessarily like pros and cons, right? Like the positives and the negatives, because that's everything, right? Everything is going to come with with the experience. You're going to have highs and lows, but that should not deter you from being involved in something that you believe in.
Right.
And I think that a lot of times for people, we get caught up, not even just people, but me, myself, we get caught up in trying to pick the right thing and trying to find the purity in something, right? Activism, that's working for social change. Okay, well, there's predatory behavior that happens in activism spaces. There is abuse, mental abuse and physical abuse and all those things that happens in spaces that are supposed to be with the purest intentions, right?
Right.
But that still shouldn't deter you from the actual, like the action of it all, right? And being a part of something bigger than yourself. And so I think a lot of times, especially for myself, I had to decide, like, am I going to allow myself to just get caught up in, well, that didn't suit me that one time, so now I'm like done with this, right? And now I'm done with climate change because some weirdo, you know what I mean, was like trying to get with girls instead of actually be here for the right reasons. No, like I'm going to stick with it because I believe in the message, right?
Right.
And so I think
that's why people, hot take, but a lot of people still go to church, Catholic church, they don't exactly have a spotless reputation.
It's true. So, it's a very good point.
Similar metaphor there. But I think to that point too, the amount you can contribute shouldn't deter you. Right. I think I fall into that spectrum. Well, if I can't do what I feel is enough, then do I just sit back and do nothing? And that's a big part of the problem too, right? Worrying, at least from my perspective, worrying about the amount of participation or contribution you can make. Right. Oh, well, that won't make a difference. Well, everything can make a difference put together, right? This is about a collective. This is about coming together. And so I think kind of just laying that out, between the two terms and how much involvement, you should definitely do it. If you believe in it,
yes,
support the people, find a way, whatever that is, whatever you can do, you should, do your research, do your homework, don't be deterred.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that was actually, one of my questions. Do you feel like you've done this in some way or another, right? Do you feel like you have fallen into the advocacy space more versus activism, right? And like for me, I think they're intertwined, right? They're definitely not just completely separate of each other. You have to, for activism to work, you have to have advocates for that, right? For whatever cause it is, right? If you are trying to set up rallies, you need advocates that are going to have the stage, to build the stage,
bring the
for
water,
you.
bring the snacks,
right?
Put up what are those easy ups or whatever they need, whatever people need.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's true. And I think that those parts are sometimes overlooked, and they definitely shouldn't be, especially as a person who, yeah, like I said, I have been to quite a few different, organizations, and then the way that they put them on is so different because their advocates are so different, right?
Right.
And so, like, I'll give an example. When I was living closer to Orange County, you would go to those activist events, which a lot of times they were just white people trying to make themselves feel good, I will be honest. But they were able to pay the activists that did show up. They were able to pay them. They were able to provide them transportation, because they were like, well, this is your labor, especially as a Black person, that you're opening up trauma for this person, right? For them to share their story. Right. And so it was like, yeah, we will pay you to come here. And it doesn't mean that they're like paying them for their message, right? No, they're just paying you to be able to come in this space and not leave feeling like you were just taken advantage of. Because a lot of times in these spaces, people feel as though you want the message, but you don't want to deal with what it brings me, right? Like, you don't want to deal with the fact that I have to live with this, right?
Right.
This isn't just
the
a
white
TED
guilt
talk.
has been stifled. And so,
right.
we've, checked that box for the day. So we're good. In this example, of course, there are many types of activism and so many different causes that people should support. But
yes,
in this example, I get that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that's why I really liked, a young person has this really short and sweet kind of take on how to define activist versus, an advocate, right? And again, to be an activist is to speak, to be an advocate is to listen, right? Like, the advocates that were there, whether those white people in Orange County had the best of intentions or not, they were still there to experience what those people of color had to express, right? And they still heard those stories. And so even if you didn't get through to every person, that's not what it's about, right? It's about being in that collaborative space and making space for people that usually are marginalized and don't have that opportunity, right? And so I think that that's why it's so important to me, is because in a way, which this is the next portion that we're coming into, in a way, being an activist is a privileged space, and I'll explain why. And so focusing a little bit more on the new gen's perspective as far as Gen Z goes, activism is there's a lot more emphasis put on activism through social media. And so this is something that, I definitely can admit I've had conflict with myself about, because for older generations, and I'm not even talking about necessarily older people, just literally like us millennials and a little bit younger.
Yeah.
We grew up seeing how social media took off. We started with MySpace, you know what I mean? Like, right. And we started with very simple, you can code it yourself.
Like, Nokia phones, playing Snake. Honestly, we're the last generation that knows what it means to live without a cell phone. That seems foreign. Yeah. Like, right. Oh, gonna run to the whatever place I haven't been before. You're like, well, I need my phone. My parents still print out MapQuest. And I'm like, what are you? They're like, oh, I need to hop on the computer before we leave because I need to get directions. I'm like,
MapQuest.
Okay, I know. What a throwback.
Yeah. Do you remember TomToms?
No, what's
TomToms? Like the little GPSs? Like the handheld GPSs?
Yes. I forgot they were called TomToms though. Wow.
I mean, I only know that. Because my husband's old. Or older.
I was gonna say older. I was like,
older. We just got into a whole conversation.
I was gonna say
he's not mid-30s yet. He is early 30s. He is a mature
young
person.
30s, for sure. Yeah.
He's young 30s.
Yeah.
He's got salt and pepper. Anyways, moving on.
I feel like he's gonna have mixed feelings about this conversation. He's like, first you called me old, and then you call me too young. Like, am I mature? Where am I? Where do I stand?
I mean, this is the thing. Salt and pepper has always been like kind of like my fetish. I'm not gonna lie. I think that has been my fetish. I've always thought like something about it. It just screams like wisdom. Gandalf the White from Lord of the Rings. Like, it's just something
you
about
guys are
that.
Getting a real insight into Ryann's fantasy life right now. Just her and Gandalf. He's like, you shall not pass. She's like, yes, I will. Here I come. Oh.
Look, I will not lie. On my dating profile, I had a video of me with like a staff, and I was like, "You shall not pass."
Oh, is that the one we filmed? Like, what were we doing? Where was that?
We were in Sequoia. Were we in Sequoia?
Oh my
Yeah.
God. When we went, okay.
Yeah, when we went to Sequoia, the national park.
camping.
Yeah.
We're not campers. We're not hikers.
We're not
the hard
campers.
way.
We do. Ugh. Oh my gosh.
What a mess.
That was fun. I mean, it was fun to look back on. Somebody rolled their ankle. Yeah, it was a mess.
Oh yeah. It was a mess. There were spiders everywhere. Bears.
Oh my God.
They'll lock up your chapstick. I like to have my chapstick next to my bed. You know?
No. Dry lips, dry ankles.
Dry ankles. The wrong shoes the whole time. It was rough.
Yeah, don't bring Nikes to the national park.
No, don't. PSA. Don't bring
PSA.
Nikes. Yeah.
If you are going hiking with real hikers, not like a day walk, like, oh, there's some nature around. No, I'm talking scaling things. I don't even know what I was scaling. I was scaling something. I was on the side of it. Remember that? Like, there was a few times where we had to like do things. And I was like, I'm not coordinated.
You had to like hoist me up. I was like, I'm barely 5 feet tall. I literally don't have the body composition to get up the side of this cliff. I don't know, exactly. Or I just wasn't built for this. So, and
I have no arm strength. Like I have like Gumby arms with like
you do have skinny arms.
A Coke bottle body.
Oh,
but
what a mix. Look out. Yeah.
This isn't fetishes, right? That's not the topic tonight.
I mean, it started with fantasies, but so it kind of ties in. Okay.
It all ties in.
Yeah.
So bringing it back to this new gen. Hey, the new generation is very open about their sexuality, about their gender orientation, about their fetishes, about how the world is going to shit. They're open about all of it. So, you know what? I'm all about it.
Although the sex rate, and I think we talked about this in body hair, is lower with Gen Z.
The amount of sex that they're having?
The amount of sex they're having. Yeah.
That's sad. Or maybe it's good. You know what? There was a lot of times that I look back and I'm like, I didn't need to have sex. Like I was just having sex.
Yeah.
It's fine. I mean,
I could take a few numbers off the docket and be fine.
Yes.
I would be okay with that. Yeah.
I'd be totally fine.
Yeah. They weren't all gems. Yeah.
No. Most. But
I know.
Another topic for
I know, right? Yeah.
But anyway, seriously. So the new gen perspective on activism and it having to deal with social media. So like I said, we grew up with the rise of social media, right?
Yeah.
And so what that meant is that for us, we didn't associate, or most of us, I shouldn't say all, but most of us did not associate social media with like activism and doing things. That was still very much so. You need to call people like on the phone and then meet up at a location to be active. Like that was very much so the case because one, like you said, we only had like the game Snake, so it wasn't like we were just texting everybody. You had like 30 texts a month or something. Remember that? We had like a text limit.
You had to pay. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. If you went over, it was always
group messages weren't a thing.
Yeah. It was a random number.
Yeah.
I think I literally had like 32 texts limit a month or something like that. It was so random, and my dad was so serious about it. Ugh.
Right. You can talk to your phone or your friends until after 9 p.m. unless they were on the same network.
Unless they were on the same network.
Do you have T-Mobile too? Oh my gosh. You only talked to that one friend. Like, I don't even like that girl that much, but T-Mobile, so
we're gonna be chatting. Yeah,
I know. That's all I got.
She'll be my best friend by the end of the month. But anyways, so I want to mention this. Like I said, she does not call herself an activist, but she was given that title because basically she went viral. She went viral on the internet, and we all know that when something goes viral, you become whatever that thing was, right? You become known as that person, right?
Yeah.
And so for her, she's actually from, she's actually from the UK, and she went viral for a picture where she was like face to face with, and this is the first time I'm even hearing of this, the English Defense League, which is a far right Islamophobic organization there, basically like neo-Nazis. And they were having a rally for whatever reason neo-Nazis have rallies. and which is a riot, really. That's really what it should be called, because they're not there to rally around anything. They're literally there to rally against other people's humanity. But another topic for another day. And so Safia Khan is her name, and I'll spell it for everybody. Saffiyyah is her first name, Safia, and last name Khan, Khan. She was there to counter protest, right? And like show these people that, you know, first of all, you have no right being here, because you're like their entire organization is built to disturb and kill and, you know, abuse others and make sure that, you know, other things don't happen. But anyways, filled with hate, exactly. And so she shows up, and I'm sure she was there with more people, but again, the way things go viral, it shows you. And so the picture was her face to face with a neo-Nazi, but she's got like a smirk on, and she's totally, you know, she's got like the like short, like really alt bangs, like these, you know, Gen Zs have. And like, it's just an awesome photo, and they're like super pissed. And she's just like, fuck you. Like, I'm here. I don't give a fuck, you know? And so she went viral, but she pushes back on the title of activist, because she says like, that's a very privileged place to be. Activists have time to learn, study. They have time to show up to events that, you know, usually take place on like, you know, during like what we call business hours.
Right. 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Yeah. That's a good point.
Right. Exactly. Okay. And so she also has a TED Talk, which is super cool. Again, like, it's just awesome that these people that do go viral for these reasons are given a platform, something like TED Talks or TEDx, they call them. To be able to like say just exactly what they actually believe. You know what I mean? Like, I know I went viral for this photo. I know I went viral for this reason, but like, here's what I actually believe. Right. And so she says that it could have been anyone. It could have been anyone that went viral. It could have been anyone that took that activist spot, because that was just a picture. It was just a moment in time. And what she believes, especially she talks about it very passionately in this TED Talk, is that everyone should have some knowledge of what's going on. It shouldn't be, you know, happening just within these spaces of people that have the ability to do it, because it should be that our communities are built off of mutual trust and collaboration for the good of all of us, is basically what she's getting at. And she says, you know, everyone is capable of that. Everyone is capable of having some type of effort into their community, which I think is super beautiful. It's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Because I think, especially like I said, older generations see activists as, oh, those are those people that go out and rile up some feathers, you know? And so I think that's really important. And so I did want to ask a question. I know this is just a very passionate topic for me. And so I do apologize if I'm, you know, talking a little bit extra, but I do want to ask you, you know, do you think activism can happen online? Do you think that online is a more viable space for the times that we live in, right? Like, it was COVID last year, but people went out in droves in the millions, right?
Yeah.
But there were a lot of people that couldn't, because they had people with illnesses at home, or they were ill themselves, right? Like, so what do you think about that? Do you think that, online is a viable way to be active?
Yes and no. You know what I mean? I think we are more connected than we have ever been, because literally the entire world is at our fingertips now. And so in that sense, you know, we can see what's going on in different countries with different people. We can hear about, you know, events going on. If there's a rally, you can hear about it, and, you know, more participation. You can connect with more people and get involved with different organizations. But I think there's also, you know, I think there's a question of authenticity as well, you know, and so that's where it gets kind of questionable.
Well, right.
Just in the sense that, you know, if you post about something a couple times, I don't know, should you?
I mean, but that's the thing, right? Like, how active, because it also depends on how active, like we said, it's on your own terms, right? You have to decide for yourself, and everyone has to do this. It doesn't matter how much pressure there is from other people saying you have to do more and you need to do more. I've been one of those people. I do feel like people need to do more. But does that mean that everyone that doesn't do quote unquote more by my standards is not good enough in the activist space? No. Do what you can do, right? Me, I take on a lot more than I should all the time. I take on a lot more responsibility than I should all the time.
Right.
Ben will love this part of that podcast. But, you know, but at the same time, that is where I feel most myself. I feel most myself when I have a part that I know I'm doing something and it's adding to it, and again, because some of this is going to be for self-gratification, you have to make sure that you are aligning with views that you actually believe in, right?
Right.
It can't just be climate change is real, and so I have to be a part of it. Okay, well, but why is that important to you, right? Like, what is it to you that drives you to go out and support, you know, climate activists, right? Because you can just be an advocate for that, right?
Right.
So I think that that's, for me, I think that it is a viable space. I think that activism definitely can happen online, and it is happening online more than ever. But I do agree with you. It has to be in good faith, which even that term, like, you have to know that you're working towards something. And even if for some people that seems like the easy way out, it doesn't matter, right? You're going to always do things that might seem like the easy way out to other people. But that's no way to live, because if you really believe in something and you believe in that cause, go after it fully, you know, and you will be surprised to realize, like I was telling you before the episode, I've been referred to as an activist, and that was never something that I set out to do. I felt like I was going out to support other activists. I definitely thought that I was more like the advocate, you know. I was like, I'm showing up for something that other people are putting on, so I'm here to support this cause, right? I'm an advocate for gay rights. I'm an advocate for, you know, human rights, women's rights, Black people, all the things, right? But I realize now that, like, that term is really just something that's given to kind of group the type of people that we see as being active for something greater than themselves, right? You can advocate for yourself at work, right? But that's for the betterment of yourself. That's for the improvement of your own situation, right? But I do think that what I was finding through the research and just really watching these TED Talks seriously, and like really like grasping what these you know, young people were saying, is that you don't need the title, and no one needs to give you the title for you to be active and for you to have a place in the fight or in the cause, right? Because you don't need to get caught up in, did I do it right? Did I show up to this protest correctly? You know, did I show up long enough? When should I leave? Parking is horrible in LA. Like, what am I going to do?
Media? Right.
You know?
No, that's a good point. And I think that's a really fair point. Just going back to the social media spot, like kind of reframing it that way. That's really true. And I think that's a good thing to question.
But seriously, for me, I think that the reality of being active, and like, you know, like this young person says, you know, it's a privileged place to be. If you don't have a car, right, taking the bus to a rally could be dangerous. That could be potentially dangerous, right? Especially if the police are involved. You're more susceptible to, you know, getting caught up in the ruckus of everything because you don't have a way immediately out of this situation, you know? And so I think that that's something to think about, you know, and something that I definitely have taken time to think about, is that not everyone who doesn't show up, that doesn't mean that they don't want to do more, or it doesn't mean that they need to do more, right? It just means that you need to be focused on you and your actions. And if you find like-minded people to do that with, that's so awesome, because it takes the load off of you a little bit. I've been there. It's been lonely. And I don't recommend it. I don't recommend doing it all by yourself. You know, I don't recommend trying to be the only voice in your, you know, immediate space. Find people with like-mindedness, but also understand that, you know, all of us are different. And so you may meet a group of people, or, you know, you may go to rallies and be like, I love the messages, but some of the things that are happening around it just aren't great. That's okay. You know, you need to take the good with the bad. That's everything. You're never going to have the perfect ideal situation, especially when you're talking about people that are probably traumatized from this issue, right? They're probably fighting to, break down the prison system because they've been affected by it, right?
Right. It's
So
highly
these aren't going to
emotional.
be
Yeah. It's
right.
not
These
all
aren't going
just
to be the
cut and
most
dry.
emotionally healthy
Yeah.
people. Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. No, exactly. It's not, this rally was great, we succeeded. It's like, this rally took a lot out of us, but hey, we showed up for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And being around like-minded people, you can't replace that, right? That is a really like priceless experience, because you realize that you're not alone on this hell earth. You find camaraderie, you find, like, I think the spaces of rallies and protests and all those things around activism, they get a bad rap sometimes because, what's portrayed on the media, and even activists themselves, they're going to show you the bad parts because they want you to see who's really provoking, which is usually the police. But they also but they want to show you that because they are putting their lives on the line. But there's beauty in that too. There's beauty in showing up and seeing organizations, providing the water, providing umbrellas, providing space for people to talk, providing hugs for each other. Like, I mean, there's just so much that we take for granted every day. Like, oh yeah, if you have somebody to hug every day, that's a beautiful thing. Not everyone has that. You know what I mean? If you have somebody to talk to every day, not everyone has that.
Right.
And so I just think that that's like the beautiful thing for me, is that it's the people power. It's not just about having power to break down the system. Yes, that's important, but it's also just about finding that we as people can come together and do things completely outside of whatever system that we're fighting, right?
Right. And you and I have talked about this at length, on and offline, about having a sense of community.
Yes.
And so to find people to fight for a just cause with like-minded people is just so exceptional. It's it really is bonding. And when things do get hard or controversial or whatever the case may be, that you can rely on people, and that is really important.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes that can be, hard to do online, right? Because everything can be misconstrued. It can be like, oh, I didn't understand what she said, and now I think we're not gonna work together on this project or something,
Right. Like questioning someone's validity or authenticity on supporting something just because they posted a couple of things on their story, which, I will backtrack. That's not really fair, having this conversation saying, you can only do what you can do. And so you have to do your best. And if other people are going to question you, that's going to happen anywhere, anytime. So you should be your authentic self. If you can't go to that rally because you have to go to work. That doesn't mean you're not as passionate as the person who got the time off. It just means that you can support in different ways and contribute in different ways. And so, and you that questioning shouldn't.
Right. And you cannot contribute, like, what is it? You can't pour from an empty cup. You cannot contribute something that you don't yourself have.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that I've grown so much over these past, like, not even just this last year, but like over the past years, I've grown in like trying to allow people to be themselves. And if that is who they are and it doesn't necessarily mesh with me, well, that's okay, but still allow them the space to just be themselves, right? It doesn't have to be well, if you want to be in my life, you need to change. Okay, well, changing is a lot more work than people tell you it is. Right. You just need to like change think about just changing like your sleeping habit. Are you kidding me? Waking up 15 minutes earlier is like, that's my snooze alarm. That's not the real alarm. Like, I don't wake up then, but trying to wake up on that snooze alarm is like way tougher. And so I just think, habits and changing those things on the whim, it's not going to happen overnight. And so allowing people space to be themselves is really the best that you can do for yourself and your own mental health, but also for other people's mental health. We do contribute to everybody's, mental health and mental space. I don't really like the idea that like, if it affects you that way, that's your own problem. Well, no, we affect people, right? We affect people and people affect us, and we can be honest about that. And this is an ongoing struggle that I'm always going to deal with, right? People are going to affect me and I'm going to affect people. But hopefully, at the end of the day or at the end of whatever we're doing together, we can still find common ground because of the goal that we had in mind, right? Like having that goal, having that cause, whatever it is to you, is very, very important. And really don't stop. Seriously, I cannot name the amount of wonderful people that I've met, people full of contradictions, right? People full of conflicting ideologies. And yeah, you're right. I hate capitalism, but I also really like designer shit. It's fine. You can do both. Like, you don't have to choose. Like, and if you want to choose, that's fine. Choose for yourself, but choose for yourself, right? Like, don't choose because society tells you that, well, if you are a feminist, then why are you getting a breast augmentation? Ooh, you can do whatever the fuck you want with your breasts. If you want to change your breasts, change them. If you want to change your ass, change it. Yeah. Do it for you. Exactly. Yeah. And so, so I appreciate this research, and I appreciate talking about it with you. Not for even just one reason, but really just because I have appreciated the friend that you are, and the fact that we have been through so much and we continue to go through so much, and not just the facials. Yes, we went through the facials together as well. Both kinds. We'll just leave it at that. But we just continue to have things that come up in our lives. And it's beautiful to me that we can still support each other, because the goal of us is not just to be friends, but it's like truly to like create family for each other. And, you know, we have family, you know, and we love them too, but we also have each other. And that's been a choice, and that's been an active choice that we've tried to make. So we are trying to be active in our friendship.
Look at it. Here we're doing it. No, that's really good. And I think you presented this in such a nice way. Like, you know, just, I don't know. I loved your examples, and I thought you did an awesome job. And this was really a great introduction. And I'm sure we'll circle around and talk about the different aspects of activism and all that good stuff. But I think just, you know, and this is just one example. I'm a white person, but you know, there are eggshells that you feel like you're walking on, like you're not doing things right. I mean, that's kind of the point of the podcast. Am I doing this right? And so just to have a better understanding and perspective, I think is so helpful. And hopefully you guys listening all kind of got something out of that as well, because I think Ryann did an awesome job there.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you for sticking it with me. And but as always, you know, if you learned anything, if you got anything out of this, if you thought we were doing it wrong, if if any of those things happened, please let us know. Please subscribe, leave us, you know, a 5-star review. Let us know how we're doing. Leave us a 5-star review, but tell us that we're shit in the comment, right? So still give us the 5 stars. But you can tell us we're shit in our email. But yes, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And also follow us on Instagram at Wrong the Podcast. And please join the conversation. We will have, you know, weekly communal conversation on these topics and more. And we are just so excited to be here. Thank you again to ProBonoASL, our amazing interpreters tonight. And every night that we do this, it has just been a pleasure. Trying not to watch the beauty that is happening, because I'm an interpreter myself, so I'm trying not to do that thing that hearing people do when they watch interpreters, but it happens, and I'm gonna do it because it's beautiful. It's a beautiful language. Anyways, thank you so much for sticking it out with us. We can't wait until we're back for another episode. Morgan, you have anything to add before we leave here?
No, we're just excited to see you guys again next week. We got a lot of fun topics, or
yes,
what we say fun? They're fun. Yes, we'll make it fun.
We
got a lot
fun.
Of good topics on the roster. We're really excited. We can't wait to talk to you guys again next week. Check us out on YouTube for the visual conversation. Like Ryann said, subscribe, save, do all that good stuff. And we love you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. See you on the next wrong thing that we do.
We'll see you there.
Bye.
Bye.